Is the NBA a game of patience or aggression? In the case of the Boston Celtics, this question becomes even more relevant when considering the possibility of one day landing Cooper Flagg, the young talent, widely regarded as a future franchise player, could be in the franchise's plans. But is waiting 5 years a smart bet or just a distant dream? Bill Simmons, known for his passionate and sometimes bold takes on the Celtics, believes Boston has a good chance of attracting Flagg after his first contract. The argument makes sense in an ideal world. Flagg develops, becomes a star, and at the right moment, the Celtics emerge as the perfect destination for a player ready to win. But basketball rarely follows perfect scripts. The risk of injuries, inconsistent development, or even the construction of a team that simply doesn't need him are all variables that could turn this scenario into an optimistic delusion. The history of the NBA is full of teams that spent years waiting for the big opportunity that never came. Can Boston really afford to wait half a decade for a player who hasn't even stepped on an NBA court yet? And what if, by then, the team's landscape has completely changed? Today, the Celtics are at the top of the NBA, competing for championships. But 5 years from now, with natural roster changes and aging key players, the reality could be very different. And what if Flagg becomes one of those untouchable players? The Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, would never part ways with a Chet Holmgren or a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Even Luka Doncic, who at one point seemed like a trade possibility, has become an irreplaceable icon for the Mavericks. Waiting could mean Flagg never becomes a realistic option, leaving the Celtics at the mercy of a plan that never materializes. If Boston truly believes that Flagg could be the player to reshape the franchise for the next decade, the smartest move might be to act even before the draft. An aggressive trade for a high pick or a young talent with a similar profile could be a more realistic alternative than betting on the unpredictable. Would Flagg fit into the Celtics system, or would he be an unnecessary luxury? The idea of bringing in a young, local, and promising player to the Boston Celtics is naturally tempting. Cooper Flagg is already considered a generational talent, with the potential to be one of the best forwards in the NBA in the future. But does he truly fit the Celtics system? Or are we looking at an obsession with individual brilliance rather than a strategic decision for the team? The big question here isn't just about Flagg's quality, which, without a doubt, is sky high, but whether he actually addresses the Celtics' real needs. Right now, the team has a well-established core with Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown dominating the wing positions. Could Flagg develop as a versatile forward in the mold of Tatum? Or would he end up being redundant, occupying space without solving the team's structural challenges? If we analyze it objectively, the Celtics don't have an issue in their front court. Tatum is in his prime, and Brown, despite some inconsistencies, remains a key piece. On top of that, Boston has reinforcements in the paint, such as Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, who still make an impact, even as Horford approaches the end of his career. The real area of concern lies in the backcourt. Drew Holiday and Derek White are exceptional players, but both are already in their 30s. Holiday, in particular, may start feeling the effects of aging in a few seasons, and while Derek White is crucial, he isn't a traditional primary playmaker. If the Celtics want to ensure their long-term dominance in the NBA, perhaps their priority should be finding an elite young point guard, someone who can take over the team's leadership in the future. Would investing heavily in a perimeter player like Flagg, who doesn't necessarily fill that gap, be the best decision? Or should Boston target a young point guard to eventually take over Holiday's role? Another important factor to consider is Flagg's development trajectory. Many see him as a new Tatum, a forward capable of creating his own shot and dominating multiple areas of the court. But how many players have actually followed that path successfully? Flagg may have a similar profile to Tatum, but that doesn't mean his development will be linear. How many prospects were once considered the next big thing, only to stagnate? Will Flagg have the space and opportunity to grow? Or would he just be another piece fighting for minutes on a team that already has established stars? Could the pressure of being the savior of the Celtics hurt Flagg? Imagine being a young player with the talent to change the course of a franchise and being labeled as the chosen one before even stepping onto an NBA court. Now add to that the pressure of playing for one of the most passionate and demanding fan bases in the league, in a city that breathes basketball and carries one of the richest histories in the sport. This is the scenario Cooper Flagg could face if he ever wears a Boston Celtics jersey. The narrative of the hometown kid returning might sound poetic, but is it truly a recipe for success, or could it become an unbearable burden? The sports world is full of players who entered the NBA with the savior label and simply couldn't handle the weight of expectations. Ben Simmons, one of the most hyped prospects of his generation, never developed a reliable jump shot and mentally collapsed under pressure, leading to a dramatic career decline. Zion Williamson, despite his undeniable talent, has struggled with injuries and the overwhelming weight of expectations, raising questions about his longevity in the league. Lonzo Ball, promoted as the future of the NBA by his own father, never lived up to the hype and saw his career derailed by injuries and inconsistency. If such promising players failed in this aspect, what guarantees that Flagg will be any different? Boston is an extremely demanding market where there's little patience for slow development. Celtics fans expect immediate competitiveness. More than that, they expect championships. If Flagg arrives with the status of the next big thing and doesn't deliver right away, the patience of the fan base and local media will be short-lived. Is he prepared to handle that? The biggest question about Flagg isn't his technicals. Talent, he has already proven himself as an exceptional prospect, but rather his mental strength in dealing with adversity. Modern basketball requires a level of psychological resilience almost as high as physical ability. Jayson Tatum, for example, took years to be recognized as one of the best players in the league, and even now, he still faces criticism. Jaylen Brown, despite being one of the team's top players, is constantly questioned about his leadership and inconsistency. Now, imagine an even younger player entering the NBA, carrying the weight of an entire city's hopes. Would the Celtics have the structure to shield him from this type of pressure? Would the franchise have the patience to develop Flagg without immediately throwing him into the fire? Or would he be treated as a savior from day one, forced to meet unrealistic expectations? Without the time to mature? Will the new Celtics ownership prioritize this move or change the franchise's direction? Every great NBA franchise goes through cycles of change, and for the Boston Celtics, a new era may be on the horizon with the recent change in ownership. For years, Wyke Grousbeck was the central figure in shaping the current management model, working alongside Brad Stevens, first as a coach, then as an executive. Together, they adopted a patient and meticulous approach, which ultimately led to the 2024 NBA championship and solidified the team as one of the strongest in the league. But what now? With new ownership coming in, will that philosophy remain intact? Or will we see a drastic shift in how the team is run? The idea of waiting for Cooper Flagg as a long-term strategic move might have made sense under the previous management, but it would be a mistake to assume that the new ownership will follow the same blueprint. Will the new franchise owners have the patience to bet on a player who hasn't even entered the NBA yet? Or will they take a more aggressive approach, prioritizing blockbuster trades to maximize the team's immediate title chances? In the NBA, every ownership change creates a ripple effect in decision-making. Some franchises maintain their philosophies despite new leadership, while others undergo dramatic transformations. Recent examples illustrate this point. Phoenix Suns. When Matt Ishbia bought the franchise, he immediately changed its direction, trading Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson to acquire Kevin Durant, while completely reshaping the roster with the addition of Bradley Beal. Patience was abandoned in favor of a win-now mentality. Brooklyn Nets. The team spent years accumulating assets under Sean Marks's management, but Joe Tsai's ownership brought a more risk-heavy mindset, leading to the acquisitions of Kyrie Irving and James Harden, moves that ultimately didn't pan out long-term. Dallas Mavericks. Since Mark Cuban's departure, speculation has already begun that the new investors might adopt a more aggressive approach to building a roster around Luka Doncic. Will the Celtics follow a similar path, Or will they stick to their tradition of long-term planning, even under new ownership? Is it worth dismantling a championship team to make room for Flagg? The Boston Celtics are in an enviable position. They have a well-established core, a deep roster, and, most importantly, a team that has already proven it can win a championship. If they stay focused and continue making the right roster adjustments, they can easily compete for more titles in the coming years. But then comes the question: how much is it worth sacrificing that stability for the possibility of landing Cooper? Flagg, if Boston truly wants the young talent, sacrifices will have to be made. Does that mean dismantling a championship team, trading key players, breaking up a group that has already conquered the NBA and has the potential to keep winning? The biggest mistake would be falling into the same trap that other franchises have in the past, breaking up something that works for an uncertain future. The NBA is full of cautionary tales of teams that made poor decisions, betting on the future instead of maintaining their immediate success. A recent example is the Golden State Warriors. Instead of reinforcing their veteran core around Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, they chose to develop young players like James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, and Moses Moody. The result? Wiseman never fit in. Kuminga remains inconsistent, and the team wasted years in which they could have stayed at the top. If the Celtics already have a winning formula, why risk throwing it away? Another key factor: what if Boston wins back-to-back championships in the next few years? That would completely change the equation. A team that is winning titles doesn't need a savior. The entire logic shifts when you're already at the top of the NBA. The priority becomes sustaining the dynasty, not making a massive move that could destabilize everything. If the current core remains strong and competitive, dismantling it, too, create space for a player who hasn't even entered the NBA yet could be a catastrophic mistake. Another major challenge in this equation is the salary cap. The Boston Celtics are already committed to massive contracts, particularly those of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, which total over $600 million. Drew Holiday and Derek White also have significant deals, not to mention Kristaps Porzingis. 2. Bring in Flagg. Boston would need to clear cap space. Would that mean letting go of essential players? Trading someone like Jaylen Brown, for example, just to accommodate a young prospect who has yet to prove anything in the NBA. Trading an established star for an unproven talent rarely works out well. The Celtics have already lived through this when they dismantled a competitive roster in 2013 to rebuild through the draft. The result took years to materialize, and it only worked because Tatum and Brown developed into stars. Is Boston willing to take that gamble again?